And we now move to leaders' questions. I call on Deputy MaryLouMcDonald.
Cian Taoiseach, over the course of the next week, you'll engage in 3 crucially important meetings for Ireland's future. Firstly, a meeting with the British Prime Minister, in which I hope you will press for a reset of relationships as equal partners. Then an EU Council meeting at a time when the EU Commission has kick-started an EU arms race, proposing a colossal €800 billion in military spending. And then you travelled to the United States to meet with the US President in the White House at a time when an outrageous threat of mass expulsion from Gaza hangs over 2 million Palestinians. This year's St. Patrick's Day meeting comes at a time of conflict, of challenge and of deep uncertainty in the world. It also, Taoiseach, comes at a time of deep public concern regarding your moves to dismantle the triple lock and undermine Ireland's neutrality. People ask why Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael don't bring that same urgency when dealing with housing or access to healthcare or dealing with the cost of living. It's never been more important for Ireland to protect and assert our long-standing neutrality fully intact. The meeting with the US President presents an opportunity to address Ireland's interests, but also a moment to speak honestly with the US President, voicing Ireland's position clearly on pressing international affairs. Taoiseach, I'm certain that you will impress upon President Trump the importance of continued US support for our peace process, for the Good Friday Agreement, a need for a solution for the undocumented Irish, and of course the real concerns regarding the impact that tariffs could have on Ireland's economy, on jobs and on future prosperity. The message has to be that Ireland is a location of choice for American investment for very good reason, that the economic relationship between our 2 countries is a two-way street and must continue in the time ahead. This will be your last time taking leaders' questions before you make that journey to the United States. So, Taoiseach, can I ask you to set out for the Dáil very, very clearly what it is that you will say to the US President regarding Ukraine and Gaza? Will you put it to President Trump that Ireland stands on the side of international law and diplomacy, that the sovereignty of Ukraine must be upheld, that the pressing and immediate priority now is to build peace through inclusive engagement and good faith dialogue? And what, Taoiseach, will be your message to the American President in standing with the Palestinian people? Will you express Ireland's strong view that the US is catastrophically wrong on Gaza, that the proposal for the mass expulsion of Palestinians from Gaza is absolutely an unacceptable breach of international law, deeply destabilising for the Middle East and the wider world? Remember, this view can be most powerfully delivered by an Ireland that is a military neutral. Remember, it was the unaligned countries who spoke for Palestine's right to exist, while those in powerful military alliances failed to stop the genocide. In fact, they financed it and armed the Israeli war machine. So caithí an teachtarach dó éireann sa teach bónaró gur féidir agus gur gá dár tír bheith mar leathmhódóirí rathúla son na síolchána son an dulcan cín agus son rathúnas na cruinne. Ireland and America can be successful partners for peace, progress and prosperity, but only if we choose to be, only if we are determined to be. So can I ask you, Taoiseach, to set out clearly what is your message to the United States on Palestine and Gaza?
Tá carta go a heachta go bhfuil na cruinnithe a bheith agam sa teachtain seo agus an teachtain seo cuaing go bhfuil siad tochtach agus léiríonn siad an ghaol leidir agus tochtach idir ardír agus an bhreatain. Cécho tochtach is atá ar ghaol idir na tíre san Aontas Eorpach agus gan áras an ghaol anna leidir idir na Stáit Aontaithe agus dear. Agus go háirithe trícín cuasaí achtamíochta rítheachtach fad. Mar ní léon áras ach go raithin forbert cuasaí Gallagher na tíre seo na Gaelta sin. Idir na Stáit Aontaithe, an bhreatain agus an ósráide go bhfuil míad páirteach san Aontas Eorpachanis ó 73 amach. So, since I've become Taoiseach, I have identified a number of relationships that are key to Ireland's future, have been key to our success over the last 30 or 40 years. The Irish-United Kingdom relationship is an extremely important one. They are our closest neighbour. And tonight we begin an annual summit which will occur every year now between the United Kingdom government and the Irish government. And it's a relationship of family, it's a relationship of neighbours, it's a very, very strong economic relationship, and we shouldn't forget that, notwithstanding Brexit. Many, many Irish small to medium-sized companies, when they begin their export story, they begin it in the British market. And we will be seeking and working to see if we can ease the barriers that are in the way of trade between the United Kingdom and Ireland, and indeed the EU more generally, because economic growth in Britain will be good for Ireland and will help economic growth in Ireland. So I'm looking forward to that meeting with my colleagues in government, a number of ministers meeting with their counterparts as part of this UK-Ireland summit also. The EU Council is a moment of huge importance, and I'm somewhat perplexed by your reference to Europe is kick-starting an arms race. I think you're missing the point. Europe and many European countries are very fearful of the threat that Russia poses to their very existence. And many of these countries have had history with Russia. The Baltics in particular, Poland and many others. We shouldn't forget that, or in our complacency in this part of the world, sort of undermine or seek to dismiss very legitimate fears that these countries have about their very, very survival. And it is real. And Europe has to be self-reliant. And Europe, in order to ensure peace and prosperity, because Europe wants peace. President von der Leyen made that in her opening remarks. Europe is about peace, it's about prosperity, it's about quality of life for its citizens. No one wants war. But the bottom line is that Europe is exposed right now. And Europe needs to enhance European member states to military capability and security capability across a lot of domains, including cybersecurity, maritime security, energy security, and so forth. In terms of the United States' relationship with Ireland, that is older than the state itself, and it's an extremely important one. And we're going fundamentally, of course, to celebrate the links, historic links between Ireland and the US. Patrick's Day has always been the traditional day to do that, and Patrick's Week, and to be there for our diaspora. 30 million people claim Irish American or Irish descent. In terms of the core issues, the economic relationship is very important. We're an open, small economy, pro-free trade, and I'll be articulating that perspective. We will also articulate our views in relation to Ukraine and in relation to the Middle East also. And I can come back later in the next section.
Well, gandáut tána na Gaelta sinnalig tá siad galéir anna tábhachtach ar fad. That is why I've raised the question with you, Taoiseach. I'm not in the least bit complacent. I am deeply, deeply concerned about the international order at this time and Ireland's place within it. Taoiseach, peace is not achieved by investing and financing war. 800 billion euro of European expenditure. Every rule in the book set aside to enable 800 billion euro of investment in the weapons of war. That's not a peace strategy. It's patently not. This country is a neutral country, militarily unaligned, and that places us in the strongest position to advocate for international law, for the UN system, for real processes of dialogue and conflict resolution, and that is where we need to be. Can you set out much more clearly what exactly you will say on Ukraine and in particular on Gaza and the Palestinian question?
I would invite you to go and talk to political parties in Lithuania, in Latvia and Estonia. Just go and talk to them. Ask them if you think our position is somehow going to ease their concern and their anxiety. I don't think you do. I don't think you get it. And I think you need to engage more widely in terms of the perspectives of others on the European continent, because they have bitter experience of what happened to their people over many, many decades and indeed centuries. And the one bright spot they got was with the collapse of the old Soviet Union. They got access to the European Union, and that's where they want to be, and they want to be secure. In respect of peace, we want a peace settlement that's durable and sustainable in Ukraine. President Trump wants a peace settlement in Ukraine. There are different perspectives on how to arrive at that. Yes, there are, clearly. And secondly, in terms of Gaza, and the Middle East, again, let's be clear, we want to consolidate the ceasefire. We'll be very strongly making that point. We want a surge of humanitarian aid into Gaza. And we just heard it's come through the Arab Peace Initiative and the Arab proposals in respect of Gaza, which I think have a lot to commend themselves.
Deputy Ivana Bacik.
Taoiseach, I want to return to an issue I raised with you yesterday, the crisis in special education. Last Friday, I joined a group of 50 parents, children and family members who had to resort to a 24-hour sleep out in front of the Department of Education here in Dublin in order to highlight the crisis that they are experiencing. And I heard harrowing stories of experiences from desperate parents, frustrated, in despair at the battle they had had on behalf of their children. One mother who told me of the long waiting list to achieve an assessment of need for her 3-year-old daughter, and a grandmother who told me about her daughter's battle to get a place in a special school for her son, who's 6 years old. I know a march will take place in Cork City this weekend protesting at the same issue, because this is a nationwide crisis, and we in Labour offer our full support and solidarity, as I know we all do, with those families in these situations. Taoiseach, securing a diagnosis through the public system for children takes years, and even achieving a diagnosis is no longer the answer it once was, because access to therapies and to the necessary treatments and to school places is so difficult. Yesterday I asked you how you would ensure that every child who needs them would have access to a school place or to therapy. And I asked when the 14,000 children now waiting for an assessment of need would be seen. In response, you said, we are working to see if we can ensure places for children next September, which is not exactly a wrought iron guarantee. And Taoiseach, I'd like to give you the opportunity today to say something more substantive on this, because every year we hear these watery commitments, but every year when the school year draws close, parents are left scrambling because there's no place for their precious child. A child's right to education is protected by the Constitution, but at least 118 children with additional needs have not received an offer of a school place anywhere this year. And we know that many, many more have had to take up inappropriate places, or indeed have had to be bussed out of their communities because there's nowhere local to go. In addition, the Journal reports that 1,274 children were moved to reduced school days in the last school year. And of that group, more than 80% of primary school pupils had special educational needs. So Taoiseach, families need to hear from you how you will achieve access to places for their children come this September, and in particular to reassure them that there will be enough staff in place to meet the level of need. Yesterday my colleague Deputy Owen Kenny asked you if the Department of Education had a recruitment freeze on SNAs, on special needs assistants, because we've received multiple reports indicating that this is the case. School principals being informed that they cannot have an SNA sanctioned for their school because it seems that the department has outlined new SNA positions will not be filled until September at the earliest. And one school we know of which has been refused a second special educational needs room despite having a classroom lying empty, the principal suspecting because the department does not want to pay for staff. So Taoiseach, is there a de facto recruitment freeze on SNAs? And if not, how can the department justify delays and refusals? And I'll ask you again, when will every child have access to the school places and therapies they need?
Respond.
First of all, I thank the Deputy for raising this issue because it is a very, very important issue, and one that I'm determined to deal with in the short term and to ensure that there's a proper system in the years to come whereby parents will know in the previous academic year where their child will be attending the following, the second level for the subsequent academic year. Parents are going through too much in terms of endeavouring to find a school place, or in terms of navigating the therapy support services that children require. If we could just deal with the school places initially. First of all, the population growth in children with special needs is growing very significantly. Funding has increased significantly. Additionality in places, teachers and SNAs has increased dramatically. That's no comfort or consolation to those parents who don't have a place or don't have access. But it needs to be said, because we've established about 11 new special schools since 2020. This is the first government in a long time that began again to establish new special schools. There had been moves against special schools, from ideological reasons, and people felt that maybe the more mainstream, the better. But that stopped. The last couple of years, we've increased, and there's been 11 established since 2020. 5 more special schools are open this coming school year. Now, I've spoken to the NCC, I've spoken to Minister Moynihan, who's also been in touch with ETB and the NCSE. There are problems in Dublin North, Dublin South, Cork County. There could be other problems outside of those areas, but there are particular issues in those locations. And suffice to say, we will have to increase the number of special schools and special classes as well. There will be 400 extra special classes that will come on board in the school year 2025-2026. 218 have already been sanctioned in the last week alone, and more will follow imminently. Staffing has increased by 27% since 2020. There are now 23,400 special needs assistants. There is no freeze on recruitment of SNAs. That's an increase, by the way, of 32% since 2020. And we have 20,800 special education teachers. That's an increase of 22,000 since 2020. But that in itself, I acknowledge, is poor consolation to those who don't have a school place. So we're going to work flat out to ensure and to do everything we possibly can to create spaces, create new special schools between now and the end of this academic year to prepare for children coming in next September. And no effort will be spared in securing places for children who currently have not been, who have not identified, or a place has not been identified for them. On the assessment of need, I have said earlier, we're looking at the legislative framework now. We're going to have to bring legislation to deal with the issue around assessment of need.
Deputy Ivana Bacik.
Well, Taoiseach, I thank you for the response, and I thank you for saying so clearly there is no freeze on SNAs. I have to say that is at odds with the experience reported to us by principals, and I would welcome perhaps a more detailed written response from you on that, because we're told there is some directive from the department that amounts to an obstacle or blockage to the hiring of SNAs that are needed by principals. And I think we all accept demographic change, but clearly there is such a lack of planning from the department, because we know the numbers of children born each year. We should be able to plan ahead for need. And I think that's what's frustrating parents. We've heard from one parent in the Midlands who has applied to 16 schools for their child, their son aged 6, who should be going into senior infants in September, but is still in preschool because no place is available. And the CNO now says you must apply to mainstream schools, despite having a diagnosis saying that they must have access to a special school place. So Taoiseach, these are the stories of desperately frustrated parents, and I think what we need to hear is a sense from your government that there will be forward planning put in place to ensure that there will be enough staff hired and enough places made available that every child who needs a special school or a special class will have access to that.
There will have to be forward planning, and that will be made clear to the agencies and to the department, and there will have to be proper preparation, over the next number of years, looking at the demographics, looking at the need, and making sure that there's a much more seamless system for parents and for children with additional needs. That's the bottom line as far as I'm concerned. Every child is entitled to an education. No school can be saying no. There has to be far more proactivity out there as well. The NCSE is conscious of this. I've made this clear. And there will be ongoing meetings that I will be convening with the relevant ministers and agencies to make sure that the increased demographic issues that will arise. We have an increasing population. The census is very clear. There's been quite a significant change between the last two sentences in terms of those indicating both within the general population disability, but particularly children with additional needs. And I'm not satisfied with the way things are now. I'm going to be very open with you in that regard. And I'm prepared to
now move to the social...
This is a key priority for us. It's very fundamental to me, and I think it's fundamental to the House as well.
We now move to the Social Democrats, Deputy Cian O'Callaghan.
Gurv Margaret, Cian Corla and Taoiseach, you say that there will have to be forward planning in the future, but why is that forward planning not taking place, and why has not been taking place under this government and the last government? Because the crisis in special education, Taoiseach, is simply getting worse under your watch. There are now hundreds of parents who don't know if their child will have a school place in September. One mother in North Cork, Sheila Casey-Jones, told the Examiner that her son Patrick has received 29 rejections for a school place. The situation is now so desperate, Taoiseach, that Sheila is contacting schools as far away as Laois, Kilkenny and Donegal to try and find a place. So Taoiseach, how have you let this happen? A situation where a family in Cork is desperately looking for school places as far away as Donegal. Taoiseach, on Friday I attended a protest outside the Department of Education where parents were sleeping out to try and get a place for their children with additional needs. And no one should have to do this, Taoiseach. Speaking to families at the protest, their deep frustration was clear. Parents told me that they've been cast into the role of project manager in trying to secure a place for their child, that they are coordinating between school principals, boards of management, builders, the NCSE and the Department of Education, that they are desperately trying to get classrooms delivered in time for their child to start school. Despite all their efforts, days, weeks and months go by without progress being made. And this is incredibly frustrating for parents and families who are already facing huge pressures and responsibilities. And this is grossly unfair on children who may not have the school place that they need in September. So Taoiseach, where is the coordination on this? Where is the drive? Why are parents being left to try and sort this out? It's the government's job to ensure that every child receives an education. And it's your role where there's a lack of coordination and a lack of drive to sort this out. One parent who was at the protest on Friday, Charlotte Cahill, has summarised her experience, and she said, and I quote, "They designed the system so the door closes at every opportunity." Taoiseach, when will these doors start opening? Do you accept that the government is failing these families and their children? And can you give a guarantee that every child who needs one will have an appropriate place in school in September?
Deputy Taoiseach.
Again, I thank you, Deputy, for raising the issue. And just to make the point, funding is not an issue here. And when you spoke about planning and so forth, and I'm aware of the case highlighted by Sheila Casey-Jones in relation to her son, Patrick. In Cork alone, we now have about 16 special schools and a hospital educated about 1,000 in the Cork area. 3 of those schools were only established in the last 2 to 3 years. Carrickline, Rochestown and East Cork Community Special Schools. And that was the point I made earlier, that in previous years there was a lack of, in my view, and this was emanating from UN sources, and people were promoting an idea that we should have full mainstream integration, and there was less enthusiasm around special schools. This was growing currency for over the last decade, and in my view that's wrong. So when the last government came in, we changed direction and we said we want special schools established because, and ultimately where we need to go is we need special campuses, not special campuses, we need a full campuses where there's a full continuum between mainstream, post-primary, special and integrated between the 3. And I think the ETB is the way forward. And I would have initiated the ETs with Minister Norma Foley in the last number of years. We've brought the ETB system into special education for the first time. In the Carrickline case, they now are the patron. And I think that is the future. And the state has to be very proactive in terms of providing special education places, new schools, and new additionality in terms of places and special classes. I mean, there would be 400 special classes established this year alone. The special needs education now is 25% of the overall education budget, and that's right and that's correct. But in terms of the school in North City, I'm awaiting further information in terms of where that issue is, in terms of that school in the north side of Cork that could be acquired. That needs to happen quickly for parents and for kids like Sheila Casey-Jones. And these issues need to be accelerated. I take that point. But there has been a lot more happening on the special school front in the last number of years than might have been the case over the last decade. But we have to do it much more faster because the population is growing. The demand will increase. There's no question about that. And the numbers coming out of primary. Post-primary has been much slower than primary in terms of the special needs provision. We have legislation which can compel schools. The approach has always been to try and persuade schools and to bring people with you so that the ethos is correct and the spirit is correct, you know, in terms of facilitating special needs education. But in my view, it's a fundamental issue in terms of rights, and therefore no school should be refusing a child on the basis of the child having an additional special need.
Deputy
that relates more to the special classes issue, but we do have to develop more special schools.
Thank you, Taoiseach.
And we're determined to do that.
Taoiseach, do you see something wrong with parents who have a huge amount in their hands, something wrong with parents being cast into the role of project managing to try and get a school place for their child? There's something fundamentally wrong with that. I'm asking you, what are you doing to sort that out? Because parents should not be put in that situation. You've said that 400 special classes have been promised to be opened this year, but you've also said that only 218 have been sanctioned. And there's a huge gap between sanctioning places and classes for children and them actually being delivered. Parents are being told that it will take between 12 and 18 months for modular classrooms to be delivered, and they're trying to manage this process. Children have a right to an education, and it's your role as Taoiseach to ensure that they get the education that they require. So I'm asking you, Taoiseach, what are you doing to sort this out? It's not acceptable that parents again are having to protest this Saturday in Cork to highlight this. So what are you as Taoiseach doing to sort this situation out?
Thank you, Deputy Taoiseach.
Well, I think it is wrong that parents have to be the proactive person in terms of securing a place for their child. I believe the state should be doing that. And I believe the National Council of Special Education should have a proactive role in both identifying the demand and the need and agreeing then the proper placement for a child. That's what I believe. That's what was the case before the establishment of the NCSE. Inspectors used to do that. When we started a lot of this in the late 90s, 1998, decisions that that government gave an automatic entitlement to children with special needs with pupil-teacher ratio, to placements and so forth. But the system grew very big then because it has grown exponentially because of mainstreaming and so forth. And the figures are quite significant. They do tell another story as well, that there's been huge growth in special classes, SNAs and so on like that. That's no consolation to the parents who are currently protesting because they don't see any light at the end of the tunnel right now. They have no chink of light in terms of what the direction of travel is for their child or where their child is going to be. The NCSE, to be fair, have been working on this agenda of a proactive engagement with parents, but I believe that is the key to it. We should be, the state should be saying, we understand the needs of this child, we believe this is the best location for that child, and we're going to facilitate the child being located there. That's where we're going to get to.
Thank you, Concordia. Taoiseach, I rise today to discuss a problem that is extremely important to me in my constituency and the adjoining constituency of your own, and that is the problem that an ongoing problem that I've highlighted in 2021 with the help of the investigative journalism of Amy Nolan from the Echo, and that was the condition of water across the north side of the city and now into the county as well. As you're well aware, the connection that was brought from Ballincollig to the old Lee Roadworks, which connected to Cork, which connected to the existing system, the velocity was too high, which started a problem, an ongoing problem. Our pipes are rusting, they're destroyed, they're breaking. There's a problem with flushing systems. Irish Water has continuously been flushing for the last 4 years in the north side. People are waking up in the north side of the city. They don't know whether they can bathe their children. They don't know whether they can wash their hands, have a shower. They don't know whether they can put a wash on and leave. Equally, there's elderly and disadvantaged people in this community that are heavily reliant on others to know if the tap is brown or if the tap is running clear. Nobody is concerned about that. We're now looking 4 years on since this was originally highlighted. Irish Water have come out with a statement to us that they need €500 million secured for Cork City Council. Working on that basis, that we provide the €500 million, it would take 90 years to replace the Victorian pipeline that is there in Cork City at the moment. 90 years at the rate they're working at the moment. Taoiseach, what Irish Water has done for the north side of the city, they've introduced 2 trunking systems, and they're continuously pumping out water. There are communities going 3 or 4 days without water, that can't run a tap, that can't have a shower, can't bath the child, can't wash their bedding. That's unacceptable. That's something that you would see on an ad for an African charity asking us to provide money for a well. The way the people of the north side are treated. Equally, Taoiseach, there are people in businesses, pubs, that are reliant on mains, that are reliant on for their ice machines, dishwashers, steam ovens, that can't provide secure and don't know whether they can open or not. We've also been highlighted, now that it has moved into a little bit of the south side, that CUH in the dermatology department is no longer providing baths in the dermatology department because they can't guarantee the state of the water. That's for people that are going on a regular basis to CUH. That is an absolute scandal. And we're asking continuously, and there's been no mention of it in the programme for government, where is the €500 million that needs to be secured for the north side? And respectfully, Taoiseach, I have to say to you, I wonder if this was happening in Turner's Cross in your own constituency, would it be acceptable? Because it's not acceptable. What's not good enough for the south side certainly shouldn't be good enough for the north side. And yet again, we're let down by you and your government.
Yeah, thanks, Deputy, for raising what is a very important issue, and I am aware of the issue. Deputy Padraig Sullivan, as you know, has been raising it for quite some time, Deputy Gould and others, and there's been ongoing issues around the quality of water, predominantly in the north side of the city. I've met with Irish Water on a wide range of issues, and specifically raised this issue with Irish Water. They indicated to me that some investments they've made will improve the situation, and that they're hoping for an improvement in the quality of water. You are correct in saying that there's huge issues with the replacing the Victorian system and pipes. However, I also believe, and we will be allocating substantial additional capital to Irish Water, and they do have to continue the replacement programme. They will also have to develop newer capacity as well to ensure that houses get built and to ensure that we can get development going. But I'm going to continually work with Irish Water to accelerate the work required to deal with this issue. It is a very serious issue for the quality of life of people, as you say, in terms of bathing water, drinking water. Of that there is no doubt. And there is a programme of work underway in relation to it. You can't wait 90 years. Accept it. And we will be allocating substantial funding to Irish Water through the updated National Development Plan. But it has to come with certain commitments and certain guarantees as to how that money is going to be spent. And you know, there's about 100 million has been spent already in improving water supply in the Cork area more generally. As you know, the Cork City water supply scheme and so on is nearing completion. Placement of the Churchfield Reservoir roof and the upgrade of Glashaboy water treatment plant and Lee Road water treatment system. And so we have a much more modernised water supply system now than we would have had in the city. There's about 600 kilometres of water mains in the city, 50 to 60% of which are made from cast iron and approximately 100 years old, going back to the 1920s. And that is one of the big issues. It's prone to bursts, it's prone to leakage. Sediment can become dislodged in the old mains during repair or upgrade works, and this has caused huge issues in terms of the browning of water, discolouring of water, and so forth. So there's ongoing issues here. There's an ongoing programme underway by Uisce Éireann, which will continue, and there will be further investments. And I think I'll come back later.
Thank you, Deputy Flynn.
Taoiseach, that's very well what you've said and your commitment here. I'm asking for the commitment for £500 million that Irish Water have asked for to start developing this. Taoiseach, are you aware that today manganese has 33 samples of manganese have been found in water, which is at an unacceptable level in Cork City at the moment. And Taoiseach, I have to say to you, this is an example of water in Cork City. There you go. That's what it looks like. That's what's coming out of the taps of the north side of the city at the moment. It's unacceptable to say, we'll try and do something, we'll try and make it better. I challenge you or any other member of this House to drink that water, because I won't drink that water. And you have elderly people around this city that can't see, that don't know what's coming out of their tap. Try and bathe a child in that water. Taoiseach, what you're saying today, it might sound good, but there's no action being taken. And my constituents are suffering. Fellow Corkonians are suffering, Taoiseach.
Thank you, Deputy. Taoiseach.
Yeah, as I said, Uisce Éireann is working very proactively to address the issue with water supplies in Cork. And the planned flushing of the network took place in the first week of July this year in the Ballyvolane area, including Ballyvolane Shopping Centre, Ballyvolane New Road, Riverview Estate, Meadow Park Lawn over a 7-week period. These flushing works are part of Uisce Éireann's network improvement plan to address water discoloration issues. It is seeing a positive trend, Uisce Éireann are saying, in areas that have been flushed to date. They expect these works to lead to further improvements in water quality. Planned flushing has been completed at Spring Lane, Ballyvolane Road, Park Court, Meelick Park and Kempton Park. And then a substantial large area flushing of Inter-North Central, which encompasses areas off the Ballyvolane Road, commenced at the end of September, will take approximately 2 months to complete. Further works are set to get underway on Wednesday the 30th of October. This planned flushing will take place in Maryview, Crescent and so forth. So essentially the work is continuing, but the investment is going to be allocated. In terms of how it programmes that investment, obviously Uisce Éireann is going to do that, but substantial billions will be allocated to Irish Water in the context of the National Development Plan to deal with this issue and wider issues in terms of water, wastewater treatment plants and water supply as well from new housing.
And we now move to questions on policy.